What's up, everyone? Today we're taking a look at the 14 points and the League of Nations, and you can't study either of those without knowing Wilson was deeply involved in the post-war negotiations. He's on some John Lennon type stuff. He wants peace forever. And so Wilson's going to show up to Versailles in January of 1919.
Wilson!
And Versailles is just outside of Paris, and he's there. He's the first U.S. president to travel overseas for an international conference. First time any sitting president had gone to Europe. And here is Wilson, the man of the hour, to try to fix this stuff. But before he even goes, he actually has a plan that he delivered to Congress in January of 1918, and here is his plan. It's the 14 points, and it's Wilson's proposal for the post-war world that would address the causes of World War I. Let's try to prevent another world war by taking a look at what caused this one and making sure it never happens again. Wilson is an idealist. He really believed that this would be the war to end all wars. And so this plan is introduced to Congress, and here's what's in it. It's very much a we are the world, let's make it a better place type plan.
We are the world. We are the ones who make a brighter day. So let's start giving.
And the 14 points are exactly that, 14 different kind of things that are going to fix and end war forever. And they're things like guarantee freedom of the sea. Remember, that was a big problem and one of the things that brought us, America, into World War I. Another item is to eliminate economic trade barriers, so reduce tariffs or eliminate them altogether. A reduction of armaments, you don't want countries militarizing. Another item in the 14 points is no more colonies. He believes countries should be given the right of self-determination. They can have their own self-government, no colonization. That should end. And he calls for the elimination of secret treaties. There's some other things in the 14 points like territorial issues. Germany should give back land to France and Belgium and so on. And then finally, one of Wilson's key parts is this. He called for the formation of a League of Nations, and this would help prevent another world war. This would be an international organization with the goal of preventing future conflict. Wilson comes to France with his 14-point plan, and while all the allies are at the Versailles Peace Conference, it's really these big four that are going to shape the outcome of the negotiations. This is the clique.
Click, click, click. Ain't nobody fresher than my click, click.
You got David Lloyd George of England, Great Britain, Orlando of Italy, Clemenceau of France, and of course Wilson of the United States. And Wilson's going to have a problem from the start. These other allies want revenge, they want land, they want power. They don't have much interest in Wilson's idealism and this idea of peace without victory. And you can see that really in this political cartoon, the conflicting interest represented at the peace conference. Wilson's kind of coming with these idealistic goals, while these allies, such as France and England, want to punish Germany, gain territory, and for them, the war was devastating. All these new weapons of war had made this war very destructive, and they're not interested in Wilson's kind of idealistic vision for the future. They don't want peace without victory. They want to gain or benefit from this war. So how did it go?
Wilson!
Most of Wilson's 14-point proposals were rejected by the Allied powers. They say, no way, Wilson, we're not having it. And after months of negotiations, most of what you saw is eliminated from Wilson's plan. Now, Germany had asked for peace based upon the principles of the 14 points, and they're not going to get it. Wilson had a very difficult time reconciling all the different interests, and as a result, the treaty that he wants is not the one that's going to get made. So what's in this Treaty of Versailles? Well, if you go back to kind of the start of World War I, it was very complicated, the causes of it. There's no one country that clearly was to blame with all the secret treaties and military building up and things of that nature. But when the treaty is finalized, they play the blame game.
Let's play the blame game more. Let's play the blame game.
There was the so-called war guilt clause. Germany had to admit guilt for the war. Germany was military is disarmed, they lose their colonies to France and England and other countries, and they had to pay extremely high reparations. And you could see in the political cartoon the big four force-feeding Germany the terms of this treaty. The Treaty of Versailles also does some stuff with regard to colonies.
Don't make me destroy you.
And one of the things that does happen is some countries received their independence. The old empires are destroyed, broken apart, such as the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Some people, such as the Polish people, get their own country. So some of the principles that Wilson advocated, self-determination, do make their way into the Treaty of Versailles, but not all of them. For example, in the Middle East, parts of the Ottoman Empire are carved up and Syria is handed over to France and England takes over Iraq. And of course, these decisions are going to have consequences even to this day in regions such as the Middle East. Other places are completely denied their independence, such as Indochina. The Vietnamese people were trying to get their independence from France. That is not happening because England and France want to keep their colonies and actually get more colonies during the Treaty of Versailles negotiations. Wilson does get the other allies to agree to create the League of Nations, and he's very excited about this. He really believes this will be one of the solutions to preventing war for future generations. But we got a problem. Welcome to U.S. Government 101. The president does not get to decide whether or not the U.S. government ratifies treaties. That's in the hands of the Senate. 2/3 of the Senate are needed to approve a treaty. Wilson must go through a Republican-controlled Congress, and this is going to set the stage for a conflict between President Wilson and Congress, because many people in Congress, in the Senate, Republicans mainly, are very worried about this League of Nations, and there's a lot of opposition. They say no. To the U.S. joining this League of Nations. And one of the big reasons why is they're worried that this is going to be America saying bye 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 to their sovereignty. And a lot of this fear of the League of Nations potential for limiting U.S. sovereignty rests with the conflict over Article 10. It said assistance must be given to a member of the League that experiences external aggression. And a lot of members of Congress felt that this would draw the United States into a distant conflict or other wars. They also were worried about it taking away Congress's war-declaring powers. You know, if Article 10 says America must go help out because a member of the League was attacked, doesn't that interfere with Congress's ability, its constitutional ability, to declare when the U.S. goes to war or not? So this fear over what it would do, what the League of Nations would do with regard to U.S. sovereignty was a big sticking point for a lot of Republicans in Congress. The other thing was a fear that European nations might become involved in the Western Hemisphere. This would be in clear violation of the Monroe Doctrine, which was designed to limit European involvement in the Western Hemisphere. So what if Europe starts meddling in Latin America affairs, Western Hemisphere affairs? Many people were worried that joining the League of Nations would allow for this to happen. So we have all of this kind of conflict between President Wilson and Congress, and for a lot of people, they continue to kind of follow the warning given by George Washington, which was,
Warning.
Stay the heck out of permanent foreign alliances. There was a tradition of avoiding European affairs, and many people after World War I in the U.S. wanted to kind of retreat and remain isolationist. What happens is you have a lot of partisan politics, factions start forming where you have the irreconcilables faction. They rejected the treaty no matter what was done to it. They had no interest of the U.S. joining the League at all. The other faction was the reservationist. This was led by Senator Henry Cabot Lodge, a Republican senator, and he wanted to actually make some modifications or amendments to the treaty, and then they would be willing to ratify the treaty from that point forward. Wilson, though, refused to compromise. He wants the treaty that he wanted and he believed in, and so he takes his position to the American people, goes on a speaking tour, and unfortunately has a stroke which leaves him incapacitated, and ultimately the Treaty of Versailles is rejected and the U.S. does not
Access denied.
Join the League of Nations. And the key kind of part to the League of Nations is missing, and you can see that represented in this political cartoon. So finally, in spite of Wilson's involvement in peace negotiations, the U.S. Senate refused to ratify the Treaty of Versailles or to join the League of Nations. That's going to do it for today. If you have any questions, make sure you post them in the comment section. And if you haven't already done so, click like and subscribe. Have a beautiful day. Peace.